As we've discussed, Ron DeSantis has become the primary rival to Donald Trump for 2024. But how and why have other GOP names who've been in the public consciousness for much longer not gotten more traction? In the recent New York Times Siena poll this week, less than half of voters surveyed would vote for Trump in a Republican presidential primary. DeSantis, his closest rival, with 25%. The next closest Republican challenger, Ted Cruz, at 7%. Mike Pence and Nikki Haley at 6%. Former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo comes in at 2%. The poll doesn't mention other prominent Republicans like former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie or Maryland Governor Larry Hogan, who are both moderates. What about Senator Tim Scott of South Carolina or South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem? They barely rank on most lists of potential Republican primary candidates. DeSantis is the only one getting a full hour on Fox News, building a war chest, already close to $125 million. He's blowing every other Republican out of the water. Sure, part of the reason is that maybe he's newer, but there's more to it. He's drawn support from both moderate Republicans, more and more alienated from Trump, as well as hardcore MAGA voters who see him as a viable alternative. Joining me now is Tom Bevan, co-founder and president of Real Clear Politics. Tom, thanks a lot for coming on the program. Appreciate it. All right, so why do you think that none of these other prominent GOP leaders have broken out the way DeSantis has?
Well, I think part of the reason is because they don't have the same platform that he has, right? He's the governor of a state of 20 million people. And as Chris and Mark just mentioned, he's been at the center of a lot of the political fights of the day over the last 2 years, whether it's the way that the administration, the current administration, the Biden administration, and the media have attacked him over COVID, the battles with Disney. I mean, it's just been one thing after another, which has helped to raise his profile in a way that none of those other candidates, even ones that have been in the public consciousness longer, simply can't compete with that. And so I think that's probably the main reason that he is where he is right now.
We're still a ways away, obviously, from 2024. Is there room in the Republican Party for a more moderate Republican, like a Chris Christie, a Hogan, maybe even Nikki Haley?
I don't think so. I mean, I think the party has fundamentally changed. And I have a theory about this, Dan, which is that there's sort of the pre-Trump era and the post-Trump era. And any of the candidates who fought against Trump in 2016, the Marco Rubios, the Ted Cruzes, the Chris Christies of the world, Republican voters, current Republican primary voters, aren't interested in taking the party back to where it was before Trump. They are interested in sort of a new breed of Republican that matches where the party is now. And this is, again, why you see DeSantis, because he's been the one who's been able to most effectively take on all of Trump's policies without all of the baggage and the drama that some of even Trump supporters would rather not have. And so to the extent that there's someone who can come along and do that as well or better than Ron DeSantis, it's still possible, but he has really got that lane. And, could there be an opportunity for a moderate? I don't think so. I mean, maybe Larry Hogan will get talked into running, or someone like Ben Sasse. There are a lot of, people out there, donors who will throw money at him and say, listen, you need to do this to save the republic, and talk them into taking on what essentially would be a suicide mission, because I just don't think it's going to be possible for any of those folks to get traction.
You mentioned DeSantis as a governor with a national platform. And it makes me think of, someone like Kristi Noem, right, of South Dakota, who has had a national platform. She's on the Sunday morning shows a lot. Why hasn't she broken out?
Well, she did have her moment. This is a while back, but she kind of flubbed. There was a bill in the state legislature that she vetoed that outlawed transgender females competing in women's sports. And she vetoed that, and that really generated a lot of backlash against her from rank-and-file Republicans. And so I think that knocked her down a little bit. Maybe she can recover. She certainly has the sort of star power, even though the state that she leads is much smaller in terms of population and media coverage, et cetera. So still possible for her.
If there was one person you say keep your eye on as we head into 2022, 2023, 2024, that we haven't sort of spent a lot of time on, who might that be?
Well, you did show a picture and mention Tim Scott. I mean, he is he has the quintessential American story. He represents, I think, the future of the Republican Party. He is a guy who I think is really poised to break out, whether on his own as a presidential candidate or as a potential vice presidential candidate for either Donald Trump or whoever wins the Republican nomination in 2024.
Tom Bevan, stick around. I'd love to chat with you later on in the show. Coming up, thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your cable provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.